tonight I have a very special guest joining me who's come on. I've asked to come on to discuss a very emotional topic, also a very sensitive topic for many people. 9/11 was an incredible event for everybody on this planet. It changed a tremendous amount of the way of life, and it has cost lives not only on the day of, but it's cost lives around the world in a war that is never-ending, omnipotent, and it just seems to be very far-reaching into many places that are very debatable, in my opinion. We lost a lot of freedoms. We also fell into kind of a cesspool pit of truth, and over the years, many people have come up with their own theories, and it's a tough topic. And I appreciate all my listeners who are listening tonight, and who will be listening to this archive and taking an interest in hearing out the theories of Dr. Judy Wood. I read her site. I came across her site by a good friend of mine who led me to her information. I was not aware of it before, and as I read through it, and as I watched the videos, and as I put the dots together myself and just kind of listened open-mindedly to what she had to say, there was a tremendous amount of truth in much of the work that was presented. A lot of it is very scientific. A lot of it is difficult to follow if you don't understand some of the scientific aspects, and so tonight she's going to be talking about just that, really, discussing it in a way that we can all understand. And so I'm going to ask everybody to listen with an open mind and an open heart. We are in no way doing this show tonight to be disrespectful to the people who lost their lives on 9/11 or those families who are still living without those people in their lives. And we're not being disrespectful to the people who have lost their lives in other countries for no reason to be connected to this event neither. I'm very compassionate to the realities of how emotional this show will be for many people. But I am going to tell you that the technology that's available on this planet right now is very real. And it is also very, very much available to those in power. We are not told the truth. Every single person in this living on this planet is not told the truth. We have no idea what's really going on this planet, and this world is not what it seems. And so basically, I am bringing Dr. Wood on tonight to talk about the weaponization of free energy technology, to describe what non-lethal weapons are, how 9/11 may have been an example of this technology, and she's going to be presenting some pretty fascinating material, in my opinion. She is extraordinarily educated. She holds a bachelor's degree in civil engineering and structural engineering, a master's in engineering mechanics and applied physics. She has a Ph.D. in materials engineering science from the Department of Engineering Science and Mechanics at Virginia Polytech Institute and the State University in Blacksburg, Virginia. And her dissertation involved the development of an experimental method to measure thermal stresses in biomaterial joints, and she has taught courses including experimental stress analysis, engineering mechanics, mechanics of material, and so she is extraordinarily qualified to be talking about this topic tonight, and I really do believe that once you hear what she has to offer, you may change your mind and rethink some extraordinary events in this world. Her website, if you would like to follow us as we go throughout the hour, is drjudywood.com, and on there she has a tremendous amount of very valuable, very intense and inclusive material that I think you would all find very interesting. So welcome, Dr. Wood. Thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And
so
what you said, that 9/11 was an extraordinary and incredible event. Yes.
Where do we start? I mean, let's kind of just go into the basics of what your theory is about the technology. What do you think happened on 9/11? Let's just go into it.
Well, it isn't what I think. And actually, I'd like to read a small portion from my book that addresses this very issue. I'd like to say, for the record, I do not believe that our government is responsible for for executing the events of 9/11. Nor do I believe that our government is not responsible for executing the events of 9/11. It's not a case of belief. This is a crime that should be solved by a forensic study of the evidence. Before it can be determined who did it, it must first be determined what was done and how it was done. You can't convict someone legally based on belief. If you want to charge someone with murder using a gun, you better make sure the body has a bullet hole in it. Yet, before noon on 9/11, we were told who did it, how they did it, why they did it, they hid us for our freedoms, before any investigation had been conducted as to what had been done. I also feel that anyone declaring who did it or how they did it before they've determined what happened, it's merely speculation or propaganda. The popular chant 9/11 was an inside job is, scientifically speaking, no different from the chant that 19 bad guys with box cutters did it. Mm-hmm. Neither one is the result of a scientific investigation supported by evidence that would be admissible in court. We need to determine first what happened.
Okay, so in your opinion, what did happen? Because I like that point. I think that's a very valid point, because there were two seemingly divided sides almost immediately, within 24 hours of this event, so to speak. And there were people, over the last few years who have decidedly taken sides and believe that it was, the government put explosives into the buildings to bring them down so we could have kind of an open-ended war and go out into other countries. And we needed kind of a Pearl Harbor event to be able to do so, to convince the American people to go to war. So, yes, that's a very valid point. And so what do you think, what did happen, in your opinion?
Well, often we're led to look at false choices because that distracts us from looking at the evidence. But if you listen to the evidence carefully enough, it'll tell you exactly what happened. The trick, though, is to not get distracted away from looking at the evidence. If you look at it that day, and one of my first reactions was, where did the buildings go? There's just nothing much left. And, before noon, there's a lot of cover-up stories, like, all shipped to China, but it couldn't have been shipped to China before noon on that day. And I've got a picture. You can tell what day it is because Building 7 is still standing. And you should have a 110-story building between you and Building 7. It's just flat ground, essentially. There's an ambulance parked in front of Tower 1. It's still parked there. There's just no more Tower 1. It's rather incredible to think of two 500,000-ton buildings just going away. That morning there were two buildings there, and then they went away. How did they went away is a big mystery. If you think about how much material that was and what happened, it is indeed an extraordinary event. Yes, it was used for something really ugly. It was used for destructive purposes, but it shows us a technology that exists that maybe we can use for other purposes. So as we look around, let's see what this technology can do. So we have an absence of debris, a very gross absence of debris. And we have what I call dustification. I established a new vocabulary to describe new phenomena. If you want to be scientific, you don't know the mechanism or the phenomena you want to describe, you can't use a description that applies to a known phenomenon to describe an unknown phenomenon. So what I do is use placeholders to describe that characteristic. Instead of using, like, characteristic number 279-5A, which is hard to remember, I call it fuzzballs, justification, toasted cars. And what I mean by toasted cars, it isn't to imply the cause. They're toast. They're history. They're not repairable. Something happened to them. It isn't like they got totaled. They're just gone or messed up. So we have all these different types of categories. Round holes in windows. In the outer pane of the double pane window, and the inner pane is still intact. I don't think a glass cutter can do that. And flipped cars, evidence of levitation. Some of the toasted cars are half a mile away. There's so much dust. And you watch the material as it's coming through the air. Now, I call those prefab units that made up the outer part of the building wheat checks, because they look like wheat checks. Actually, a photographer first called them that. And you see one of these wheat checks flying through the air in the videos. And as it comes down, it's like melting, like ice cream. It just goes away before it hits the ground. And you see all these wheat checks coming down towards this particular intersection. Right afterwards, there's a picture of the intersection, people coming out of their hiding places. There's just paper paper and dust. Few pieces of aluminum cladding, but just paper and dust.
Now, I had a chance to actually stand on the site a few weeks after 9/11 happened. I was actually on there with a hard hat and all, with a fire department, literally standing on leftover pieces of building and looking straight down through holes in the ground and seeing papers just kind of embedded into the debris. It was an extraordinary experience for me personally to do that for many different reasons. But what I found most interesting was how quickly that debris was taken off-site, to the point where what you really only had left was the big ramp that went down that everybody's used to seeing from all of the different footage that we've seen over the years, and the surrounding debris. Where did it all go, and why do you think they took it away so fast?
One of the easiest traps to fall into is making an assumption at stage one as to what happened, because then when you go to stage two, if your first step is wrong, the assumption is wrong, everything after that's going to be wrong. So it's really hard to observe without a bias. We've heard so many things; it's hard to tune them out. Mm-hmm. But let's look at what happened. The buildings were turning to powder in midair. How much could they have hauled away if I'm not saying all of the building turned to powder, but if 90% of the building turned to powder? Is there anything to pick up and take out of there?
Yeah. Well, there was some stuff to pick up and take out, but there wasn't a lot. And what was interesting to me, which when I stood there, was that the other buildings surrounding it were very much intact, with the exception of a few. And Building 7 was on the other side of some buildings in between, and that fell as well. So as far as the dust goes, I'd like you to continue with, what you know to be the reality of the physics of the building structure itself, and why would it turn to dust? Do you want to jump right into the technology that's being used, or do you prefer to build up to it?
Look at the data. The evidence leads the way. Before I began this, I'd never thought of energy weapons. That just never crossed my mind, even though my area of expertise is in interferometry. But I never thought of directed energy weapons or any kind of military use of weapons that involves energy, directed energy as opposed to kinetic energy. Kinetic energy is like if you launch a bullet or a cannonball or a bomb, something physically that moves and destroys things. But if you just keep looking at the data until you really feel that it's speaking to you. One of the things I noticed about this dust is about 15 minutes after the North Tower goes poof, I don't say collapse, it went poof, there's no indication it went down, this intersection, these people are standing, and there's a slight breeze that day, like 8 or 9 mile per hour breeze. And so the air kind of cleared out pretty quickly after the tower went away. And so you see this blue sky off in the west, and then you notice around these people's feet fuzz, dusty fuzz rising up. I call those fuzz balls around the feet. Maybe they're kicking it. And then pretty soon, at the 20-minute mark, you see that the dust is rising up all by itself. What does that tell us? It tells us that coarse dust landed and then became fine. That fine dust could not have settled out of the air. Why would it be going back up again? And the air is clear. So if you have coarse dust land that keeps breaking down finer and finer, that's an interesting process. And it broke down. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. It just, it is an interesting process, but for most people, they wouldn't understand the science behind that. And I just want to remind people that they can go to Dr. Wood's website at drjudywood.com, and you can see the videos for yourself. You can see the pictures that we're discussing. It does help to see the visuals along with listening to what she's saying. So I do highly encourage people to take a moment as they're listening online to go to the website itself to take a look at what we're discussing. Judy, when I saw these pictures of what you're describing, I listened to one of your lectures on YouTube first, and I kind of really couldn't get what you were describing until I actually saw the pictures. So I wanted to interject here just for a moment to let people know that that's probably a good idea to make that connection with what you're talking about.
Excellent. So if you go to drjudywood.com, that's the home page, you'll see yellow blocks and what says Cliff Notes, or you can just type in drjudywood.com/WTC. And that's sort of a one-stop shopping. You've got a whole lot of different categories. And there's some little guys waving that show you where the link is in each section that takes you to the index, so you can always get back the index. And if you go to Section H, fuzzballs. Figure 62 shows just north of the WTC, just about a block north of the Tower 1, blue sky in the background. But if you start looking carefully, you see the fuzzballs around their feet. And the pictures just below that show these fuzzballs. This horrendously thick dust that could not have settled out of the air in 15 minutes.
Well, we have a question that's been submitted by a listener, Abraham. He asks you specifically, which is related to what we're talking about now. He says, can you please ask Dr. Wood why she thinks so many people have a problem accepting the fact that steel and marble were transformed to fine dust on 9/11, when even the mainstream media, ABC News, has admitted to this fact. He then references a YouTube video. And then he would also like to know, when did you first learn of the University of Alaska magnometer readings, I guess the iron-rich microspheres in Hurricane Aaron? We will be getting into that later on in the hour. So thanks for your question, Abraham. I appreciate it. So we will address the hurricane and the weather disturbances associated with what we're talking about tonight later on in this hour. So why do you think people have such a hard time accepting the fact that these buildings turn to dust?
A couple of reasons. One, it takes time to think about it themselves, so they'll just grab onto what they're fed. The other thing is, it's too scary. It's, what happens if Dr. Wood is right? The implications, they get afraid. And that's why I would like to remind folks that it has good things with it, too. If we look at it that way, it's worth studying it. But the dust has, it's one of the most important aspects of this. If you have dust breaking down finer and finer, and then studies show that the dust was so fine, it was approaching the scale of DNA. It was much finer than red blood cells, like 100th of the size of a red blood cell. So that was just being inhaled directly into people's bloodstream, making people very sick. This is not like anything we've seen before.
No, it's not. So are we looking at what is called free energy technology? Are we looking at examples of technology that's obviously not mainstream?
Yes, very much. There's no way around that. You see an entire building, a 500,000-ton building, in mid-flight turn into powder that's, microscopic. We're not talking about a few pieces of microscopic dust. We're talking about it's not hitting anything. If you have a bomb in the building, bombs blow things into chunks. The chunks go flying. They stay chunks until they hit something. So you see chunks launched in mid-flight, they stay chunks. But this turned into powder as it traveled.
So as it moved away from the building, it became dust-like particles. Is that what you're saying? To somebody like myself who doesn't have a degree in physics or doesn't understand, the mechanics of what you're describing, is that basically the picture that we're getting, that as the material flew away from the building, it became more and more finer dust particles?
Right. Think of, let's say, a computer keyboard. As that's flying through space, it breaks in half. Then it breaks. Each of those halves break in half, and each of those, quarters breaks in half. Keep breaking it in two, finer and finer, and just keep on going down until you have nano-sized particles. The material is just dissociating, coming apart.
Okay, so let me just try to wrap my head around what some people have described as, if a plane were to hit the building, in your opinion, do you believe this building would have fallen in the way that it fell structurally?
If a plane hit the building, see, I'm not even making that assumption. I say you got a plane-shaped hole in it, but who knows how that? We're just going by one thing at a time. But if a plane had hit it, planes don't take down buildings. The building's also built like a tube within a tube, kind of like a tree. Trees have lots of rings around them. I've caught a lot of grief for saying this, but I still think it's appropriate. Talking about the Keebler elves, they drill a hole in the tree to put the cookie oven and whatnot. Squirrels drill holes in trees, other things. The tree doesn't fall over.
So structurally, it's not possible even if a plane, I know your opinion on that topic, but if a plane hit the building, it's not structurally able to collapse just on that fact, correct?
Correct. No way. And here's something that I think everyone can understand is they saw that the buildings remained standing. That shows that whatever happened to it didn't cause the building to fall down. And it wasn't a high wind day. Those buildings were built to handle up to Category 5 hurricanes. They're built to sway in the breeze. And think of a sponge. When it curls over, the inner side of the curve is in compression, and the outer side of the curve is in tension. So these buildings being built to bend over meant that they were designed to take many times the compressive load if that's on the downwind side. In other words, they're built to withstand, I'm just going to guess, 20 times normal load, and it wasn't windy, so those things were standing straight. So that's already showing that they're, an over-design. And also, buildings are designed with an importance factor, not just a safety factor. Safety factor takes care of, any statistical deviation from what, the estimated material properties are, and then some. But the importance factor is a multiplier on that. It's how important it is for that building to stay standing if something happened. And if that building went, it would take out a lot of southern Manhattan. So you can bet that had a very high importance factor, that under whatever circumstance, that building better remain standing. So it was well over-designed. Like if it was built out in the middle of an Iowa cornfield, if it went down, it just hurt the corn. If it was empty, no people in it, it would just hurt the corn. So it would have a lower importance factor.
Okay, so we're actually discussing, for those of you who may be just joining us, I'm talking to my guest tonight is Dr. Judy Wood, and we're discussing the alternative to what happened to the official story on 9/11 and what she believes is basically use of free energy technology that has been weaponized, and she is with us tonight to describe the evidence to support that. So we've been discussing the mid-air pulverization of the buildings and how they were turned to dust before they hit the ground, which has been very interesting. And again, I'd like to refer you back to her website, drjudywood.com, to see the pictures for yourself, to watch the footage, and make up your own mind on what you think. I have to say, Judy, that I couldn't watch this or read through your website without really having some dots connect for myself. I've been fortunate to be researching a lot of different alternative topics for many years now. I have bits and pieces of a lot of different things, and there was a lot of connect the dots in your work. So I really appreciate what you're putting out there as far as what you're talking about. Now, what about the underground mall that survived? Now, how would that be explained with what you're discussing?
Well, actually, it's even more dramatic. I have an upcoming book. It's soon to be out, like as we speak. And in there, there's much clearer descriptions and very detailed descriptions of things. I've got a picture of the mall and the floor right above it and right below it. Right above it, you have a missing building. It's gone. Like you take a broom and sweep it up almost. And the floor below that is a little bit caved in here and there, but people are walking straight up. You can read the names of the store signs. You know where you are in the mall. And the floor below that, the loading docks, don't look like anything happened. It's completely intact.
Now, on your website, you give out these facts, and you say that the upper 80% approximately of each tower was turned into fine dust and did not crash to the earth, and that the upper 90% approximately of the inside of World Trade Center 7 was turned into fine dust and did not crash to the earth. So in your experience and in your background, I mean, it doesn't take, really, it can take some common sense to figure out, the thing at the top isn't supposed to be turning to dust before it hits the bottom. Usually the heavier stuff is coming down and crushing the things underneath it. So is this the basic foundation of what you're trying to make people aware of, what you're trying to give evidence to support that this was alternative technology?
Well, the evidence it goes on and on. It's kind of overwhelming, actually. But one of the biggest aha moments, I call it, that Cliff Notes page started out being a listing of my aha moments, was these cars that were found over in FDR Drive, or actually under FDR Drive, about a half mile away, that were toasted in weird ways. There's one car that looks like the back end just had a new wax job, just came off the showroom floor. The front end is completely toasted. There's holes eaten to the metal. Very dramatic difference, like black and white. On the right-hand side of the car, on the passenger side, the front door is completely toasted. The back door is pristine. There's an abrupt line. And I kind of wonder, they have rubber gaskets to seal the front from the back. On the other side of the car, there's the back door is toasted, but except for a circular spot that's pristine condition. I call it the wax spot. It's a circular spot. On that boundary, 1 nanometer to one side is toasted. 1 nanometer to the other side, I don't know if it's a nanometer, maybe it's a millimeter, it's not toasted. Fire does not do that.
So we're looking at a disturbance of elements, so to speak, would you say? Something that would disrupt the normal physics of what we would expect to see? Yes.
It is a different kind of action that we're familiar with it, but we just don't know it. It's a type of interference.
Interference with what exactly?
Different kinds of energy waves. My background being in optical interference allowed me to have a mental model of interference that was a direct analogy. And after I tabulated all of the evidence, I was looking up something and ended up on someone's blog and found all of these photos of all of the various phenomena that I had seen at the WTC that they had produced, like on their kitchen table. That was John Hutchison. he had demonstrated the same thing. How he does it is interfere a radio frequency signal within a static field. He first used a Tesla coil, then later used a Van de Graaff generator. So if you have a static field and then interfere in that, a radio frequency signal, weird things happen. It isn't just like adding the two together. It's like, as I like to say, you can get into a house, a burglar can get in a couple of different ways. They can take a bulldozer and plow down the front door, or they can pull out a key and open the door. This is like a key that opens the door to this extraordinary energy.
Well, I have something for you. I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but when we were standing on the debris that we were standing on, I was standing there with a family member and also 4 or 5 other firemen. We witnessed, all of us, a gold wedding ring melted into a steel beam in perfect form. So I could never understand how that ring was able to do that without melting itself. And I wish I had gotten a picture of it because, for whatever reason, it just wasn't appropriate. But I didn't think much of it at the time because I was so consumed with the emotional impact of standing where I was standing. But that doesn't make any sense. You can't have a gold wedding ring embedded into a steel beam and still be intact.
On my Cliff Notes page, if you go down to section U, the Hutchison effect, you'll see photos, say figure 142, 143, 144. Well, 142 and 143 are a piece of wood that's embedded in aluminum. The wood didn't burn up. Aluminum melts at 660 degrees centigrade. Wood would pretty well be toast by then. And then you have a copper penny that's embedded in the aluminum. How the wood got in the aluminum was sitting on a wooden piece of plywood, and they just like mushed into each other during one of Hutchison's tests. Now, here's another interesting thing. I kind of jumped the gun here, but talking about weather events. You ever see a piece of straw through a tree, through the bark of the tree?
No, but I have seen some very interesting pictures on your website of wood boards cut through, basically impaled into the center of a palm tree, which I've never seen before. I'm also looking at, as we're talking, I'm looking at pictures of the penny in the aluminum, which is exactly how I saw the gold ring myself, and the knife in the aluminum. I'm finding all of this pretty fascinating. And like I said, you really just can't look at these pictures and ignore the fact that there is something extraordinarily odd going on here. This is not something we're taught. This is not, based on the physics we're taught in school necessarily. And to be honest with you, it's disturbing to me that this is the evidence that you have on here, and nobody's looking at it. Nobody's saying, "Wow, this is really odd." Something doesn't make sense, not with what you're presenting, but with the actual story of what's happened, or the actual reality that we believe around what happened. No matter what it is, no matter what our perspective is about what happened, we're looking at something that happened that we really have no idea about, because it's not mainstream, it's not being talked about, it's not on the national news. We're not being shown the pictures of these kinds of things publicly unless people like you come forward courageously and, fight the mainstream opinions in all directions and really present this. So when I'm looking at this wood in this tree, it's just a fascinating picture. So describe to me what's going on here.
That's from Hurricane Andrew. The 2x4 in the tree and the plywood in the tree.
And how are Hurricane Andrew and 9/11 connected, in your opinion?
Well, it got me thinking of similarities, and I just look at where the data tells me to go. Again, it nothing to do with who did it. Just put that out of your mind because it'll bias your thinking. Just look at it and try to figure out that you need to know what went on. and look at it from that perspective. So I was looking at this dust that goes up. That was very revealing. Also, I'd been set up in a psyops thing where the interviewer was trying to prove to me and get me to say that all the dust went down. He was trying so hard that it was clear to me this guy knew what happened and needed to cover that up. But he was kind of green at it, and he ended up almost like whistleblower revealing that that's what they need to cover up. So I decided to go look at the dust and how it went up. So, got satellite images of it going up. Let's see how far up I can get pictures. And, if I look at weather satellite images, maybe I can see how far up it... What is that? It's a hurricane. Right outside of New York City on 9/11. And then I got to thinking, what do hurricanes do? I'm not, concluding why it's there, but it was there. That's a fact. So, what do hurricanes do? Well, let's start looking into it. And then I found the two before the tree, and I think we've all heard the stories about the straw in the tree. The straw must be going so fast that it goes through a tree. It didn't make sense. The straw, can't do battle with a tree under normal circumstances.
Right.
And you get some strange things. Okay, so start looking at weird weather anomalies. You have cars sitting on telephone poles, from tornadoes, from hurricanes. You get weird field effects. Birds know to leave town when they sense a hurricane's coming. They can feel it. Some people claim they can feel the storm coming. It's a different electrical energy in it. And also, if you look at the shape of a hurricane, it's this like toroid around the top on a spinning stem, kind of like a big Tesla coil. It operates the same way, and you get lightning coming off of it from the top to the ground. You have a different electrical potential there.
So can I interrupt for 1 second, because I want to know the Hutchison effect that you described. Now, are we talking about the use of frequencies to manipulate material? Is that what it is?
It's not so much frequencies. It's an interference type of effect. It's interferometry. It's a radio frequency signal interfering in a static field.
So it's a radio wave type interfering with the electromagnetic of whatever, correct?
With a static field, like from a Van de Graaff generator or a Tesla coil.
Okay. So we are looking at kind of something very interesting, I think, at this point, because if we're talking about Tesla coils, we're talking about manipulation of electromagnetic fields, we're talking about the use of frequencies in a sense, and it sounds like some alternative technologies that have been kind of out there in the alternative world, floating around the internet and making a splash in certain, subcultures. Are we actually looking at an obvious example of this being weaponized?
I don't know what it isn't, let me make something clear. John Hutchison enjoys playing with nature. Nature being, with this interaction, and can, fiddle around and make this happen. Has no intention whatsoever of using it as a weapon. To harm,
correct. Because the free energy technology is not just used for weaponization. One of my point is, what I'm trying to kind of ask in a subtle way, I guess maybe not so subtle, is this technology exists, but it has a very, very distinct twofold use kind of thing, where we can use it to actually to obtain free energy and to free, there's a tremendous world change opportunity with this technology. And the reason that this technology is being suppressed is because of the corporate, the military industrial complex that has control over the money and, and all the power and stuff, doesn't want it to become useful because they can't make any money off of it in a sense.
And he who controls the energy controls the people.
Yes. And on the other hand, being the military-industrial complex that they are, seeking out whatever use can use for whatever they design, usually has a war intention, a weapon intention. So, yes, I thank you for stopping this so that this can be clarified. And I'm sure that my listeners who are familiar with my show and my work, that they understand that I am a big supporter of free energy technology. I've recently had several scientists on the show who talk about free energy technology and the positive uses of it. But I think it's very, very important to show the facts behind the fact that if this technology was used in 9/11, that it can be very dangerous.
I guess what I'm getting at is that it isn't my position that John Hutchison's work was weaponized. It's my position that this technology has been around for a century at least. Tesla had this, and John Hutchison was just replicating some of the work of Tesla, but he's doing it here and now, and you can go watch. You don't have to read about it in a book or a hypothesis or theories or something. You can actually see it for yourself.
Yeah, and so that's another good point, is because we're not just talking about a theory or an idea or, I think this may have happened. Judy is actually presenting, Dr. Wood is actually presenting facts on why this supports this kind of technology and how it supports this kind of technology. So I think it's really important for listeners and everybody who's hearing and reading and looking at this information to understand that this is not just her idea of how to make up what happened on 9/11. She is very clearly looking at the evidence and making conclusions based on what she sees. Now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Also, add something about Tesla. Tesla, in a recent document that was recently declassified, Tesla had apparently, I think it was in 1926, had proposed to Congress that if they built towers around the entire perimeter of this country, every 200 miles or so, he would install a little box on each one that would establish a vertical plane through which anything that passed would, quote, dematerialize.
And so when was that? When was that?
1926, I think.
1926. So in 1926, we had the capability of disintegrating planes in midair.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if that doesn't make everybody listening to the show just pause and contemplate the reality of what that means, if we were at that level of technology back in the 1920s, where do you possibly imagine we are in 2010, going into 2011? It just blows my mind when I think about this, because I really don't think we have a clue that the masses, the common population on this planet who gets up every day and goes to work and pays their bills and, just wants to take care of their kids and be able to buy a nice car or whatever it is that they're doing with their life, has no clue what's happening in this world. Would you agree?
Oh, very much, very much. We're caveman by comparison. The technology is night and day, what we know and what is actually out there. And John Hutchison, again, has demonstrated that issue, that, doing a remake of the Ark of the Covenant. I think it's been around for centuries, but it stays suppressed. One thing that I found quite interesting is, Tesla is credited for developing alternating current, hydroelectric power plants. And that's why he's the father of the Industrial Revolution. But what is so interesting is it's called Con Edison, Toledo Edison, Ohio Edison, Southern California Edison. Not anything to do with Tesla, even though it's alternating current that's being sold. And Edison was about direct current. I didn't learn about Tesla.
So this technology would be able to produce the kind of disintegration at the top of the towers, yes?
Oh, yes. Yeah, for sure. Easily. And we have evidence of that everyone is familiar with. I became familiar with it when I was a little tyke, around 10 10 years old or so, Topeka, Kansas. Our family drove through Topeka the morning after they had that horrendous tornado that destroyed a large portion of the city. It still may be to date the highest dollar value of destruction from a tornado, or it's definitely one of those of all time. This humongous tornado just destroyed everything in its path. It went for several miles. What I remember that I'll never forget is this bed with a white bedspread. The bed was made. It had some magazines on the bedspread, had some books on the dresser, clothes were hanging in the closet. It was not in disarray. This apartment building was sliced down the middle with half the building just missing. And the other half, it wasn't like a big wind had blown through there. These magazines were sitting there. The bed was made. And certainly, with a half a building, people aren't going to get there making a bed. I saw the same thing in Building 4. The main body of Building 4 went missing, and there's only the north wing that remains, sliced off with an X-Acto knife, or so it appears. It just reminded me of that site in 1966 where the tornado went through. And when people say, there wasn't enough energy to destroy the building, that's the funniest statement, because the building's gone, so obviously it was enough. We need to figure out how it happened. But where does the energy come from a tornado? Folks say, you didn't do calculations, so we don't know if it's true or not. Well, do you sit and do calculations to determine whether or not that was a tornado? You see a tornado come and go, and then there's just nothing left, in its path. The energy comes from somewhere. It's a natural unlock.
How do you think this was delivered on 9/11? How do you think that this happened? How was the technology delivered?
I don't like to speculate. I can just say it has all of the parallels with this phenomena. These phenomena, the round holes in the windows. It's a double pane glass. The outer window has a round hole in it. The inner pane is still intact. What lifted the cars up and didn't take the leaves off the trees? It's also non-self-quenching. It continues on. I was there in 2007 and 2008, and the ground was still fuming. You were mentioning all the stuff that was hauled off from there. Mm-hmm. More was hauled in than was hauled away. I've got pictures over time where the dirt pile gets taller. They're bringing in dirt and dumping it on the site, stirring it around, and hauling it back out. And the dirt was fuming. It could be saturated with water, but there's fumes coming up from the dirt.
So, okay, I want to remind people to go to their website to look at the pictures, to follow along with what we're discussing on the show tonight at drjudywood.com. I'm looking at them right now, and I'm just, as you're speaking and as I'm listening to you describe this, it's just really appalling to my senses, in a sense, because it really just strips away everything you believe in.
Right, and that's the key. I'd like to quote that quote my roommate had on her poster in my dorm room. See the world as a child sees it, with wonder and with hope. Forget about everything you've been taught and just look. What do you see? Not what you've been taught to see. And you start seeing a whole new world of things.
Well, I think I'm going to have to bring you on for another hour because we only have about 4 minutes left in the show, and I still have questions for you. But I would like to invite you back to come back and do a part 2 and discuss some of the, because I really have a tremendous amount of questions for you that follow along some more of the obvious. Follow along more of the work that you've done. But I would like to talk about, in the remaining part of the show, is the weather connection. Now, I know we kind of touched base on that in the past hour, but do you feel that this technology produces weather anomalies that we see? Is it a side effect, do you feel, or is it kind of all connected?
It's all connected. There's also other interesting details with it, such as a sudden shift in the Earth's magnetic field with each one of the events happening that day, which is another interesting anomaly. The plot thickens. It also coincides with the path of the hurricane.
Well, nobody put this together because, obviously, maybe I'm assuming, how could you not notice that these steel columns that were the main structures of the buildings were wrapped around like carpets? They didn't just melt and fall to pieces. I mean, you have pictures of these steel columns being twisted into spiral-like pieces of, weird sculpture-like looking pieces. It's really bizarre. How did that happen?
They're wrapped around the vertical axis, not the horizontal axis. If something was buckling, it would bend around the horizontal axis. That's the crazy part.
Well, I think it is crazy in the sense that it doesn't make any sense when people look at this and when they realize. I mean, you may not understand the physics of it, but the common sense of some of these things that I'm looking at, even all of them in some levels, when you put them together in the picture that you're painting, you have live footage on your website of the dust just goes poof at the top and falls. And then all of a sudden you have all these tremendous anomalies in the structural elements of the buildings that just don't make any sense. And if I hadn't known to look for that, I wouldn't have seen that. And I think many people are not qualified to look for that. They're not even aware to look for that. They don't even understand the structural components to things like that. And because the physics we're dealing with is not the physics that we're taught in high school, correct?
Correct. And my background is in observing the evidence. That's my strength. And so even before I had figured out what happened, the handlers of the cover-up knew I'd figured it out.
Yeah, I had a feeling that you wouldn't be able. Now, your book comes out, and you do offer a free book online that discusses this. Is this going to be the same book that you're coming out with, or is it something different?
The free book is one by Andrew Johnson. My book will be available hard copy only, and it's hardbound. It's kind of like a textbook. But if anyone reads it, and you don't need to have a science background to read it. My father, whose background is in political science and education, not engineering or any kind of physical science, read it no problem, and it was interesting watching the transitions as he went through.
Now, out of curiosity, Judy, because we're running out of time, did you publish this through mainstream publishing, or did you have to fund this yourself?
I had to fund it myself. I was contracted with a publisher, and the publisher wouldn't publish it. And
that's what I thought. Get a copy of the book, guys. Read it. Look at the pictures yourself, and I don't know. It's pretty convincing. And I'd like to thank Dr. Judy Wood for joining me this past hour, and for all of you listening. And this has just been a show that as I've been talking to Dr. Wood, I've been following along with the pictures, and I'm blown away every time I look at them. Thank you, Judy, for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for educating your listeners.
And everyone, it's truth time. It's time to wake up in the world. We don't have the luxury of being asleep anymore. Until next time, namaste. I'm Hillary Raimo. Until then, live well.